It is 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and we're here to ask why do we have 435 representatives in the U.S. House? Uh, I'm Walter, the resident lawyer, and I'm joined by Roger Scott, the resident CPA. Hi, Roger.
Howdy.
So I understand you went to the No Kings protest this weekend and asked a lot of people why 435.
Yes. I actually went to two. Went to two
Wow, how was it?
demonstrations.
Yeah, yeah.
It
What
was
was it
it
like?
was it was good. We had not had one here in my little town of Burlington before, but we did this time. So I went to that. Topped out somewhere between 300 and 500 people, I think, lined up along Church Street at just outside the city park. Had a good time. Met a lot of people. I had a sign that basically says y435.org in a circle with some colors and stuff. So that got noticed. Several people asked me what it was about. I gave them a card, gave them a sort of thumbnail sketch, and asked them to please go to the website and read the Declaration of Representation and sign it if they agree, that sort of thing. I got interviewed by a reporter at the second one. There's some small local publication. I don't even remember the name of it. Maybe he'll contact me. I gave him a card too. Maybe he'll contact me when it publishes. It's probably a weekly kind of a thing.
Very
But
nice.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I went as well. I went to the No Kings protest here in Laramie, and there were a
Uh-huh.
ton of people. More people than I've ever seen congregated outside of the courthouse here in Laramie, and more than anyone else that I met had ever seen there. Everyone was amazed at the energy and just the number of people.
Estimate the
Um,
crowd size. What do you
yeah,
think?
I think it was probably 1,000 people.
Yeah, that's a good size for Laramie for sure.
Yeah. Um, and I had a great time. I talked to a lot of people. I happened to be hosting our first local event this Friday, and so the timing just kind of worked out well. That I went with flyers talking about that and handed them out, and just said, "Hey, would love for you to come to a debate that we're having this Friday at the local coffee shop and 5 p.m. this Friday, and it's free and open to the public. We're going to be debating war in Iran."
Hmm.
And Iran. And yeah, I got really good response. I mean, a ton of people were very interested. They're local. It wasn't people from out of town, the great majority, and they're very interested to come. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to have a good showing this coming week. And, I also had the opportunity to talk more at length with a number of people. And then I also wound up getting interviewed by the local school newspaper. And
Hmm.
so supposedly she's gonna publish about the upcoming event in that paper, and yeah, excited about that. And because our No Cap Fund logo has a crown on it, I was wearing that
Yep.
our vest, and so she was like, "Wait, did you organize this protest?" And I was like, "Well, no." I was like, "I have the solution to this protest, but I did not organize the protest." I said, "It's
Yeah,
often
that's it.
easier to it's often easier to find problems than solutions. We're the solution
Right.
here to help the problem."
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought. I want to come back to that, but I want to talk for just a minute about the larger protest later in the day. So Burlington was
Yeah.
11-1,
Okay.
and like I said, it was the first one that had happened in Burlington. We didn't have a local chapter before, so I've been to Greensboro and other places, but the one
Yeah.
in Chapel Hill started at 3:45. Right, so I had
Okay.
plenty of time to go home and have lunch and get down there, and I was still late. And I figured
Okay.
they'd be hanging around for a little bit before starting the march because they went, I don't know, 2.5 miles all the way down Franklin Street, which is right on the edge of
Yeah.
the UNC campus, into Carborough, the neighboring town,
Yeah.
and all the way to the farmers market area. Well, by the time I got there, I couldn't even see them. I was hustling down Franklin Street, walking really fast. I finally caught up to them, I don't know, half a mile or less from where the end point was for the march, but it ended at the farmers market site, and I don't know, I'm estimating there was maybe 5,000 people there, and we all went into the
Wow.
farmers market and milled around for half an hour, and then some speakers came up and started speaking, and there was a
Ah,
few tables there, so I was annoyed, right? I've tried a couple of times at earlier events to set up a table, and it just wasn't a
yeah.
thing. It didn't work out. but this time they were tables, and I didn't have one, so I was a little annoyed. But I picked up
Ah,
some interesting literature for one of the other tables.
yeah. Wow.
Become an anarchist or forever hold your peace.
Not for me, but I've been having arguments with anarchists since college. So
Yeah. Well, there was a table with some sketchy emo types behind it, and they had a whole bunch of literature. That was one of their offerings. A few other things, but
I
interesting
think
crowd. It was all
we've got a
joyous,
better offering. We have a
huh?
better offering, Roger. We got to get you there with a table.
Right. So, and exactly, we got to get us a table. So that's the interesting
Yeah.
thought. Since the event ended, I was
Yeah.
too damn sore to do anything else because I also came home and gathered a bunch of wood and burned it all, a
Uh-huh.
bunch of deadfall wood from my yard over the winter. I wanted to burn it before the weather
Yeah.
gets, the cold weather goes away. So I did that Saturday night too. So I was exhausted
Uh-huh.
Sunday. I didn't want to do anything. I watched TV and listened to the talking heads talking about no kings. And the
Mm,
question keeps coming up from these cable news anchors. What is it they want?
yeah.
There's a protest, there's no kings, but what specifically do they want? Well, I'll tell you what we want. We
Yeah.
want to reverse the trend of power flowing from the people through the Congress to the executive. We want to reverse
Yep.
that. And the way we do
Yep.
it is to uncap the House. So now I've set myself a task of writing a piece that I'll probably put on my own Substack and nobody will ever see it. But I want to explain that the logical end result of the No Kings protests is to uncap the House so that we have more energy and new ideas to drive us forward.
Amen. These protests happened around the U.S. and maybe around the world. I don't know.
Yes, around the world,
But
every
yeah, I
continent.
saw some photos with just giant crowds. Just, I mean, pretty monumental.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
And the next thing they're organizing, the move on in the 50-51 groups, the next thing they're advertising is May Day, a general strike
Mm.
on May Day, May
Oh,
1st.
interesting. Wait, No Kings is doing this?
Well, not No Kings. No Kings is organized. It's a umbrella. It's organized by No Indivisible. It's organized by 50-51. It's organized by
Okay.
right. So I don't think No Kings is not really. Maybe it's an organization, but Indivisible is the one, the biggest one that's part of the group driving it.
Yeah. Yeah, it
But
seems
so
like No Kings is
Indivisible is
it's kind of a decentralized uh, organization, and at least my AI is saying that Indivisible, Move On, and 50501
yeah.
is they're
Well,
kind of the ones maybe helping organize things behind the scenes.
it's 50-51 is the way it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah.
50
Okay.
protests in 50 states for one reason, something like that. It's 50-51.
Oh, okay, interesting. So, I mean, obviously they're planning more protests. Do you know when the next one is planned?
I don't know when the next No Kings is. I don't think they've announced it yet. Surely it'll be before the election. I'm going to guess end of August, early September.
Okay.
But the next thing that I heard, the Ezra Levin, who's Indivisible, he's one of the founders. He was on
Okay.
TV promoting this general strike May 1st kind of thing.
Okay. Cool.
Which
Well, that'll be interesting.
I'll
I
be
mean,
in
what
Portugal,
I
so
think it's yeah.
it won't matter to
What
me.
I realized is what a tremendous opportunity we've been wasting. I mean, the No Cap Fund and the Representation Foundation by not being at every single No Kings protest and handing out literature, because it's like I think that the pundits have a point, right? It's like the No Kings protest. It's like, okay, yeah, we understand, not happy. What what's the plan? And we could arise to be the plan for that entire group, and so we could convince almost every single person is at one of these No Kings rallies that this is the solution. And I would say, my success rate was pretty darn high at my event. And
Mhm.
I want to be present at the next one because it's just like everyone's there, so we should
Well,
be there
yeah.
handing out stuff.
they're already there, and a
Yeah.
fair portion of them are predisposed to
Yeah.
political action, at least at
Right.
this point in time, right? This season of their life.
Exactly. Yep.
Not everybody would agree to take another step and go further, but a lot of those people are motivated already, and that is
Yeah.
exactly the audience we need to reach. That's why,
Yeah.
I want to go to the Democrat county party and the down home party. I think I'm going to
Yep.
join Indivisible. Here's another piece of information. One of the people who organized the thing in Burlington, she's, I guess, the Indivisible chapter here.
Hmm.
She said they're out there every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Guess where I'm going to be Thursdays at 4 o'clock going for it, and I'm going to drag my wife out there too because she needs the exercise. And she's angrier than I am. She shouts really unpleasant things at the television screen. She needs to direct that energy somewhere else, man.
Oh man, that's great. Well, so another update for my weekend, and we can come back to the No Kings, but I went to a talk by this gentleman, Edward Larson, and
Okay.
he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and this is his book, Declaring Independence: Why 1776 Matters. So he came and gave a talk about this book, and I bought a copy, and he even signed it for me, and I'll read you what he signed. He said, "To Walter, thanks for support of preserving and extending representative rule of law in America. Edward J. Larson." And I'm only 30 pages into this, but man, I've got it dog-eared, and I'm like underlying like every other paragraph. And there's just, I mean, it is just a fountain of information about representation, Roger.
All right.
This
Show
book.
me the cover again. Declaring Independence: Why 1776 Matters. Okay.
And I'll just give a brief summary based on his talk, which is that there were a lot of years that matter to the founding of the American Republic, and why do we focus on 1776? And that's when the Declaration of Independence was signed, but there were battles at Concord and other places in the year preceding.
Yeah.
We didn't actually become a country until quite a bit later, and almost a decade. And why focus on this year? And the reason is because it was a tipping point, right, where essentially the colonists said, "You're continuing to tax us, Parliament, without representation. You're doing this without listening to us. And so, dear King George, please tell the Parliament to get their act together and provide us some representation." And dear King George says, basically, pound sand. And so they, yeah, exactly. And so the people said, "Well, we don't want a fucking king then." Sorry, pardon my French. But
No
that was the sentiment, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're
Women
talking
are
about
not listening
bloodshed.
to us. It's okay.
Yeah. And positive thinking, Roger.
Yeah. Well, yes,
the-
it was a tipping point, but it was also something else in my estimation. In the year earlier, the battles at Concord and Lexington and all that, some hotheads up there in New England decided to do something. But in 1776, we all spoke with one voice. That was the importance of 1776, in my opinion.
Well, and some very important writings. Common Sense by Thomas Paine. It was really instrumental. And one of the things that really struck me, and I got to read this briefly if I can find it. Oh yeah, here we go. So the text of the King's speech did not reach. This is the text of the King's speech, basically decrying their request for representation. The text of the King's speech did not reach the colonies until December and first appeared in some newspapers during January 1776 after news about the burning of Norfolk, which in turn had followed word of the British bombardment of Charlestown and Falmouth. By then, copies of Common Sense, a new pamphlet published anonymously on January 10th in Philadelphia, had begun spreading like wildfire throughout the colonies. As never before, events and words, deeds done, and ideas expressed aligned in the patriot mind with an energy that transformed America and ultimately the world. And one of the reasons I bring this passage of it is because it shows the role of the media at this time, right? Like in a lot of ways, like what the media was doing, it was just taking the representatives or ideas from prominent people and just like reposting them, right? It was just like newspapers were a place for your representative to give you information, right? It was a conduit, right? It's kind of like the internet, right? Like anybody can post anything. I mean, a newspaper essentially was like, if you're a representative, you can have your stuff printed. And obviously we've gotten so far away with that. And I think it's always important for people to come back to the fact that the decay of our media system has happened in tandem with the decay of our legislative and representation, our legislative branch and our representation in the legislative branch as that power has transferred over to the executive branch. And and then I also just have to point out one more time, and we talked about this last time, but it's been bugging me, and I'm looking into filing a lawsuit around this because I think there's a really good textual hook here, and that's the 16th Amendment of the Constitution, which says the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on income. It says the power to collect taxes is in Congress. It's not in the executive branch, and Congress delegated this authority to the IRS, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know, and you're the CPA, but I don't know very many people that like the IRS. And it just seems clear to me that the IRS is in no small way a violation of the 16th Amendment, right? Congress, the 16th Amendment says the Congress and the executive branch shall have power to lay and collect taxes. It says the Congress shall. And so that's not permissive, it's mandatory. And it niggles me because this was the founding problem, right? It was about taxation without representation. And as I go to pay my taxes this April, I don't feel represented, and I don't really want to pay my taxes. I'm going to, because I don't want to go to jail, but I'm doing it. I'm going to do it, and then probably immediately file a lawsuit. That's how I feel currently.
I have concepts of paying taxes. I have a concept of paying taxes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you're the lawyer, so you're in better position to make this determination than me. But I don't see the problem. Congress has the power. They chose to delegate it. They wrote laws, the Internal Revenue Code, right? They've repeatedly written laws to instruct their delegee how to behave. So I don't see the justiciable issue. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, so it's called the non-delegation doctrine. And so the Supreme Court has allowed delegation of some authorities, but they've also not permitted delegation of some authorities. And so, for example, the overturn of the Chevron doctrine was, I think in some ways, a turning back a little bit of the delegation doctrine, right?
Agreed.
They previously allowed agencies to interpret gray areas of code or statute, and they would get deference if it was in any way tied to a rational basis. And Loper-Bright reversed that. And so I think the current Supreme Court is less favorable to that because for the reasons that we're complaining about, and there's a number of Supreme Court cases that have kind of pushed this direction, which is, the executive branch, the delegation of power from the legislative branch to the executive branch essentially eliminates the protection of the separation of powers that our founders designed, right? That if you read the Federalist Papers, all the Federalists were worried exactly of a king, right? They were worried about a person who had tyrannical tendencies because that's who they were living under. And so notably, they designed a structure of government that divided power and specific powers. And so what's interesting, there's some really good legal papers out there called the Subjects of the Constitution and the Objects of the Constitution. I think I've mentioned this before, written by Nick Rosencrantz, who's a professor of mine in law school. And
You've mentioned him, yes.
What he says is, if you look at the text of the Constitution, especially the beginning, right, the actual text of the Constitution before you get to the amendments, it's pretty specific. In like Article 1 is all about Congress, right? It's saying here's what Congress is about. And Article 2 is all about the executive. Here's what the executive is about. And Article 3 is judiciary. Here's what the judiciary is about. And often it's written subject object, right? This is a little bit of like English lesson, but
I downloaded the PDF. You've mentioned Rosencrantz's writings before. I've downloaded them. I haven't read them yet.
So the subject in the object of a sentence can be used to kind of interpret its meaning, right? And this is, what lawyers often have to do is you read a sentence, you say, okay, well, who has an obligation or a benefit from, a certain sentence? What are their duties? And, when you get to the amendments, some of the amendments are somewhat, it's not clear who the subject of the sentence is because it's written in the passive voice, right? And this is like the idea of active versus passive voice. And so it's like, something shall be done, but it doesn't say by whom. Well,
Right.
the 16th Amendment, I would just say it's somewhat unique in how specific it is that it says Congress shall do this thing. And what that instructs me is Congress shall do this thing and may not delegate it, right? I think that it is obviously an interpretive, it is an interpretation. And I'm not, because I haven't read into all the case law, I don't know that it's going to be a winning argument. I think there are standing problems with getting before a court on this. But I think that it might be, it's just an interesting hook to me because it really resembles the spirit of 1776 in a peaceful way of really just saying, we're being taxed without representation, right? Like, even if, I think if we had an uncapped house and an uncapped house was delegating certain enforcement authority to the IRS or all enforcement authority to the IRS, I would have a voice, right, to lobby my congressman to say, this isn't working out. This isn't working out. You need to change the tax code this way, or I'm having this problem with the IRS. This one enforcement agent is just reading this thing all wrong, right? Like, can you please talk to those guys over there? And they're just not, right? We don't have that level of communication. And it just, to me, it resembles very much what King George III was doing, which was, getting into wars and then asking the people to pay for them, with tariffs and taxes that nobody had any say in. It's like, I mean, that kind of feels like, my life. That,
Right.
it's basically my adult life has been the U.S. getting into wars that now I'm funding, and we have this endless debt. And I don't feel much representation.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this clarifying question just for my own
Yep.
benefit. So
Yeah.
the IRS is different from, for example, the FAA, right? They're both
Yes.
executive branch departments at the moment, but they're different in your mind in this case because IRS represents something actually written in the Constitution. The FAA is just a creature of Congress, right? That's how they're different.
So yes, and also I would just say that the fundamental power of Congress is to tax and spend, right? Essentially, that's kind of it, right? If you don't have a taxing and spending power, you don't have a government, right? So it's the bedrock of government, and our founding battle cry was about being taxed without representation in a legislature or parliament.
Right.
And so, just from a historical perspective, like, we didn't have trains, planes, automobiles, climate change, or petroleum, fossil fuel use, right? There's so many modern inventions that are, you could say they're very advanced, and so you need expertise, and so we're going to delegate authority from the legislative branch over to the executive branch because we don't have the expertise in the legislative branch. I think we could fix that by capping the House, but putting that aside, that is all just very different from the fundamental bedrock principle of our government, which is that Congress collects the taxes, they tax the people, they collect it, and then they legislate how they want the executive to then spend it. Right? The executive branch really, at the end of the day, is in charge of spending the money. Right? The legislature says, "Dear executive branch, here's a bill authorizing the budget that you get to go spend." Right? And
Ways and means and appropriations. Yep.
exactly. And so, I just think it's fundamental, and so that in that way, it's different. Is the most striking to me. It is.
All right.
It's
All right,
why
fine.
we fought a Revolutionary War in 1776.
All right,
Or
fine. I'm
1775,
told I
sorry.
still don't think you'll win, but I don't think you're insane, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Progress.
Well, so I think what struck me is this sense that, you know, there was a path towards reconciliation. The founders thought there was a path towards reconciliation. Everyone sort of had this sense of potential reconciliation, and then they weren't able to reconcile, and so they split. And I think we're in a much better position, obviously, than our founders were, for two reasons. One is, you know, we still have a constitution, we don't have a king, and what we do have is incredible technology and tools to reach a lot of people with a singular message. And I think that's what we're doing. And, you know, if you're listening today, I would love for you to go to our website and check out our Declaration of Representation, sign it, and consider contributing, opening up a local chapter. You can donate your time or talent. We are so grateful for all of those that already have. I mean, the number of people stepping up in the last month is just astounding. And it feels like, you know, with a undeclared war in Iran where American soldiers are being killed, and we have, you know, a buildup of 50,000 American soldiers around the Strait of Hormuz, this is serious. I mean, we're getting ourselves into another Iraq situation where we're going to spend boatloads of money, and most of the American people are going to be asked to shoulder that burden without seeing a lot of benefit or representation in deciding where the next war is going to be fought on our behalf without ever asking us a single thing.
Right. So I have a problem with the language we're getting ourselves into. No, we're being dragged into by careless, reckless people. We're being dragged. We're not getting ourselves into it. We're being dragged into it.
Yeah. I mean, without representation, right?
Correct.
And it's just amazing the parallels, right? Taxing the people, not giving them representation, endless wars that you're funding on our backs. You know, the average debt of like, if you take the national debt and divide it by the population, the average American owes like $130,000 or something like that. So
yep.
And it's just, and it's growing by the minute because we're printing and borrowing more money to service just the interest. And I don't see what the plan is for, and I'm not saying we have to have a balanced budget, but I think there has to be a ratio, right? There has to be a debt to income service ratio. That's what's required for me to go get a loan.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we expect that to be true of our trading partners? Why would our trading partners continue to trade with a country that has a debt to income service ratio that is just totally out of whack?
Hey,
and so, you know,
Donald Trump keeps going bankrupt again and again and again, and people keep doing business with him. What's the problem? Hey, we have a question in public chat. We have a question in the public chat.
Public chat. If the rationale is to delegate hinges on the relatively small size of the House, could that offer a strong opening to challenge the cap?
In your lawsuit.
Yeah, if the rationale to delegate hinges,
in the impetus for your lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is kind of the nature of the lawsuit, I'm imagining, is essentially saying that.
Thank you for the question, whoever sent that in, Alusian.
Yeah, thanks, Alusian. Yeah, I do. I think that the small size of the House has been one of the rationales for allowing the delegation. And you know, what I need to do is I have to go back and do a survey of all the cases on the delegation doctrine, because it's been 10 years since I've gone and looked at it. So I'm gonna do that. It's on my docket, and you've got to follow up here. I imagine a scenario where each department delegated powers, yes, must at least be headed by a House member. You know, so I was talking to some politicos today who, you know, we were talking about having legislative staffers who are embedded in the executive branch. You know, we've talked on here a bunch about having ledge staffers that have basically been transferred over from the executive branch. So they're bringing that executive branch knowledge over, and they could work for, you know, committee staff or independent staff. They could be back in home districts most of the time. But, you know, being able to have ledge staff that embeds with executive agencies, if you're going to delegate that authority, would provide I think a much more reasonable delegation, right? If you're going to delegate legislative authority, at least keep your pulse on it, guys. I worked in House Energy and Commerce Oversight Committee, and it was a joke because we don't know where the files are, we don't know who the key players are, we don't know who they're talking to. There's just so much information gap between the legislative branch and the executive branch, and I think one of the best examples of this is seeing the executive branch spying on members of Congress, right? Or presidential candidates, but mostly members of Congress, right? Members of Congress are not capable of spying back on executive branch employees, right? They're just not that good. They're not as technologically savvy. They don't have the expertise. And also, there's not that many of them. We have 3 million executive branch employees. We have 40,000 ledge staff. We're on the same number of judiciary staff. And so it's asymmetric. The power dynamic is so asymmetric that it's almost King George, right? It's almost King George, but it's not. And I think that's important to remember because there is a way to vote our way out of this. And maybe it comes to additional strikes, right? I mean, maybe it comes to nationwide strikes demanding that we uncap the House, right? The only solution to the executive branch overreach problem is a stronger legislature. And what was amazing at the No Kings protest was I said that, and immediately they were like, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that. You're absolutely right." And it's like it's like, "Oh my God, these are my people." They're so worried. And in this way, there's always a silver lining. I mean, Donald Trump is a blessing, right? Because if we had another, reasonable executive, right, this would continue until maybe power had been so centralized that there was no out. And maybe, it's possible. It's possible that we don't get there, but it's not probable. So I'm excited and energized, Roger.
All right, so we're following up here with the questioner. It imagines a scenario where each department delegated powers must be headed by a House member. I'm not so sure about
that's
that.
What we were just talking about. I mean,
I'm not so sure about that though. Yeah,
I don't think it should be. I don't think a member should head it, but I think a staffer should be like the deputy chief or like a middle manager to like keep tabs on what's going on.
The House could have, or Congress together could have a CEO that's responsible for organizing all that work that's not legislative, that's not going to show up in a bill, in a law, right? Managing the IRS or managing whatever other agencies the Congress gets to have direct oversight and control of. They could hire a professional to do that answers to them. Right. But I don't know the necessary. I mean, I vote for this guy. I elect this guy or this person, women too, to go there and make laws, not run a business. And that's going to be a full-time deal trying to run the IRS as a full-time job. I don't want a legislature doing that instead of legislating. So I disagree with the second point there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Roger. I think it should be a staffer that works for a legislative branch employee that can hold any amount of power that's delegated to the executive branch imminently like close to them. And here's the key point. Executive branch civil servants are not terminable at will. Staffers in the legislative branch are terminable at will, right? Which theoretically means that for your dollar, you are going to get a more efficient employee. I mean, the efficient market hypothesis or whatever would say this. Because they're terminable at will, you're going to get better employees who do more work for less money. And so transferring that staff from the executive branch to the legislative branch means you're going to get more bang for your buck. It's actually going to save the taxpayers money. And I think the opportunity is, again, for the staffer to be accountable to your representative, right? So if that staffer is not doing a good job, then your congressman can fire them on the spot, like right there. You're done, right? And in the executive branch, they can't do that. All the civil servants have civil servant protection, and so you have to have for cause, and you need to show all these different hurdles you have to jump through before you can fire them.
That'll flip eventually. That will flip eventually. That the civil service protection was put in place in the executive branch for a reason, because of the patronage and the abuse. If you put all those people in the legislature, patronage and abuse will follow, and then you'll end up with civil service protection for those people as well, because this is America. Bad actors will take advantage of things until they're stopped.
Well, certainly there will always be bad actors, but the accountability for bad actors is quality representation, I think, right? It's that bad actors, you can um, identify bad actions and report that to an appropriate person who can take action. And, you know, I see the problem, or I think the reason that civil servant protections came into the executive branch in part is because all of the power is there. So you only really had to convince one person, the president, to hire and fire, 3 million people. Whereas
Mhm.
if it's spread out amongst, 1,000 representatives, it's like, okay, well, one representative might be able to hire or fire 1/1000th of the workforce, but probably not much more than that. And so you're never going to get like a clean house
Mhm.
of the legislative staff. So I think there's a little bit of counterbalance there, but you're certainly correct that there's always the opportunity for abuse.
They'll figure out a way. The civil service protections came about for a reason, and I expect that reason will continue on into the future, regardless of what happens with the balance of the
Well,
employees.
well, I think it should stay in the executive again because it's one man, right? The idea that you can have one person, a new president, come in and just like completely gut the FAA that would
Mhm.
be a danger to the American public. I think
It
that
is
would
a
be
danger to the American public right now
okay.
because we have a president doing the best he can, and sometimes more than he is allowed.
Sure. You're correct about that. I mean, which another thing in the news, right? I think the TSA travel chaos has continued, and we've got ICE agents have been deployed to what stand around and checkpoints.
To normalize the presence of armed federal agents in places where they shouldn't be in advance of the election.
Okay, that's
That's
one
the
theory.
darkest interpretation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and meanwhile, the price of your flights are about to go up. They're about to double,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh,
and we
but
are.
hey, there was one encouraging piece of news last week though. Delta Airlines cut off special services for members of Congress. They've always had a special desk they can go to so they don't have to deal with lines and the riffraff, the general public. Delta has cut that off. If members
Hmm.
of Congress want to fly, they got to stand in line like everybody else. I think that's a encouraging sign.
Um, we've got Illusion has made another
Yeah.
comment. Most citizens don't realize that electoral reforms are possible. They're powerful, nonpartisan ways to upgrade the democratic process. Yeah, we totally agree, and that's our job here is to educate more and more citizens. So, Illusion would love to have you share the information that we've got on the internet, and we are available. If anyone wants to reach me, you can shoot me an email at w@nocapfund.org. Also, happy to answer any random legal questions you might have. Try to provide value here in the weekly live stream. We do have a special guest coming up on April 13th, and he is a professor who's got some interesting thought pieces about representation that have come out. So we'll be discussing that, and looking forward to that. We'll have more details next week. What else is going on in the world, Roger?
Oh Jesus, what's going on? Well, I can tell you what's not going on in the world after last night, which is Duke University men's basketball team. I was crushed. Oh my God, right there in the last 10 seconds. It was just a tragic, tragic error.
Oh, it's tough. Single unforced errors, man. Well, then talk about the darker side of things. How many of those unforced errors are somebody getting paid?
That's a good point. I hadn't even considered that at this moment. Now, the person who made the error is Caden Boozer. His father's Carlos Boozer, who played for Duke and was in the NBA. They got plenty of money. I don't think these cats are necessarily susceptible yet.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. Well, you know what else is going on? There's still a war in Ukraine that's happening. In
Oh
case
yeah.
that's escaped anyone's minds for the last I don't know, however long we've been in war in Iran.
In fact, it's going better. The war, the Russian invasion against Ukraine, Ukraine's doing better now that they stopped sharing intelligence with the United States. They're gaining back their territory. You heard about this, right?
No, I didn't. I hadn't heard that.
Oh, several months ago, the French and the Ukrainians became concerned that America was sharing intelligence with Putin. So they doctored up some fake intelligence, and sure enough, it found its way into the Russian hands. So they've stopped sharing intelligence with the U.S. And now they're having more success on the battlefield. Now, maybe that's just a coincidence. I'm not saying they're related. It's just,
Yeah.
thinking out loud.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, I have not read anything in depth about Russia-Ukraine. I don't think since the Iran war has popped off, and that's my own fault. I should be,
Yep.
but it also hasn't been in my face. But that's part of the, I guess, the media ecosystem. I know that the oil situation with the Strait of Hormuz being closed is directly affecting the war in Ukraine, and I have to imagine our munitions availability in supporting Ukraine is being affected by what's going on in Iran. I think I did mention this, right, that there were Ukrainian special ops guys who were being deployed into Iran because they had all this expertise with Russian drones, which I think are in some ways related to the Iranian drones. I actually had the pleasure of, so at the No Kings protest where I was giving out flyers, I happened to be there. The two volunteers that I brought with me, one of them is first generation American, but her dad is Iranian. He immigrated from Iran, and she's got a whole bunch of family there. And so we were asking her questions. And the first thing is it is pronounced Iran, not Iran.
Correct.
George W. And the other thing is, a tremendous history and culture. And we discussed the invention of mathematics, coming from Persia. Incredible food. She also cooked us an Iranian dish yesterday, and it was incredible, just full of flavor, and what a tremendous human being to just volunteer to help like that. And she has, I think, 300 cousins and family members there, and all of them hate the regime, to be clear, and I think that that sentiment is widely held. And she's just like, what are we doing installing the sun, right? What's the end game here? And we started talking about the American involvement in Iran, so since the 1950s, and just what a cluster it has been for America. And so the debate that's coming up this Friday, the topic is a motion for or against war in Iran. And I think one of the things that came to mind for me is like, okay, well, now we've stepped in it. What is the solution? Because obviously, if say Trump were to pass away tomorrow, and JD Vance steps in, what would the West, what would the technocrats, what would the powers that be, what would they look at this and say, this is a victory, and here's the plan, and you're going to execute it, JD Vance? And it's hard to say, right? It really is. It's so sad, right? I mean, you think about these kids who are, the kids in Gaza, the kids in Ukraine, the kids in Iran, and it's just like, again, my tax dollars going to kill kids, right? Without a plan. And
you meant to preface that by saying, once again, my tax dollars.
Once again.
Iran is doing a really effective job of trolling the Trump administration, America in general, but the Trump administration specifically. They're sending out a lot of really clever memes and AI videos. They've got one where starts with a Native American looking up to see what's coming to vanquish him, and then it goes the Chinese, the laborers in the Old West, and all the different groups that Americans have done wrong over the years, both internally and externally. And it just, the scenes meld one to the other. Those guys they're very good at trolling us. And to be fair, we give them plenty of material.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I talked with her about that just solidified for me what we're doing, I was just like, well, don't you think Iranians would be more excited about America's help if we had a functioning democratic republic at home. And she was like, absolutely. Just if we were leading by example,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe, just maybe, a foreign intervention to depose, a truly kind of despotic, tyrannical, religious theocracy,
Mm-hmm.
we could do it. There is a world in which we could have done this well, but we have not for over 70 years. And the solution is to uncap the House. I see we got Lucian has
A
one
follow-up.
more
Yep.
comment. Yeah,
I
what's your
assume it's for you.
specialty? Yeah, okay. So I'm a civil litigator mostly. I also do some estate planning. I practice in Montana and Wyoming, where I'm licensed. I'm also licensed in New York, but I don't practice there very frequently. So if there are questions, they're best posed in hypotheticals, and you can shoot me an email. You can also, if you have, don't give me crazy details about other people, and my provision of advice is not legal advice. You should always consult your own independent counsel. But I'm happy to walk through hypotheticals and try to analyze just what would it mean to be well represented in a problem situation, right? And that could be the death of a family member in your complicated will situations, to business disputes, to fence line disputes, to patent disputes. And there's a lot that I don't know. There's way more than I don't know than I do. And that's why it's called the practice of law. It's also called the practice of accounting.
Yep.
It turns out most professions are practicing. You're practicing because part of acquiring wisdom is realizing that will always be more that you don't know than you do.
And it changes all the time. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, would love to receive any questions. w@y435.org. Again, no attorney-client relationship is going to be established. Please present your question as a hypothetical. Don't name names, and I would love to get any questions, and we will feature them on the next show. And also happy to bring you on if there are folks with questions that they want to present as a hypothetical or a situation they want to discuss. A situation of representation. It could be a construction defect, right? So if somebody fixed your house and they screwed it up, we could talk about that. Something I have a fair amount of experience with. And the opportunities are endless. Am I going to be uploading any video from your attendance at the No Kings protest? I do have a short video of me handing out flyers. I don't have a ton of video. In part because I didn't want to show up in people's faces with a camera to, just a brief pitch for our in-person event here in Laramie. We're going to be operating a debate in 2-month sprints. In each 2-month sprint, we're going to focus in on one topic. In the first month, we're focusing on Iran, as I've said. The first month is just going to be floor debate. So it's just, anyone can talk. There's a set time limit that they can talk. We'll go through. There can be some rebuttal. And it'll be moderated by me as kind of the speaker, and it will not be recorded. So, importantly, I want people to be able to speak freely and not feel like they're being recorded. And at the end, they're going to elect representatives to then host a stage debate in the second month. And that one is going to be recorded and televised. So we'll be getting that out for sure. And so that kind of brings me back to why I wasn't recording at the No Kings protest. My view is that this constant recording of everything makes people act like actors instead of real human beings. And I think that there's a real detrimental impact to this. And this actually goes all the way down to the level of physics. If anyone is familiar with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, what that principle stands for is that if you observe subatomic particles, the observation actually influences the observation. You can't tell both the spin and position of subatomic particles because there's influence in the observation. And I think that it's true, at least at the psychological level, and those concepts are not necessarily directly correlated, but I think it's useful to think about them that way. Anyway, so I in general don't, I was not recording much, but yeah, I'll try to get that clip uploaded. So, and thank you for all your questions and being here. And yeah, Roger, anything else from you? Oh, you're on mute, good sir. There's a lovely silence.
Yes, I recorded a couple of videos, but they were not videos of me. I was
Okay.
solo on that day. Elise was at a protest in Annapolis with her cousin on that day. So I was solo, and but I took videos of the crowd in Carborough when there was about 5,000 people there. Um, so
Nice.
no,
Well, maybe
couple
maybe we
pictures,
can get some
couple
of those
videos,
together.
none of me.
Well, that's great. I took some photos. I didn't take videos in the protest. Part of that is because I was like speed talking. I had all these flyers to hand out to people, so I was like trying to get as many as possible.
I saw something recently. I think it was one of the few occasions when I actually went on Amazon lately because I try very, very hard to not buy anything through Amazon. I don't want Jeff Bezos getting any more of my money. But I saw something.
Does that make Walmart the good guy now?
No, it makes
Like
eBay the good guy.
Walmart is above Amazon. Oh, I like eBay.
Yeah.
That's
eBay.
a solid. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they have the
who
best.
owns eBay? Doesn't Google own eBay now?
No, I don't think so. I think it's at one point it was freestanding.
Oh, it looks okay.
Anyways,
some guy found it. Go ahead, keep going.
What I saw, this idea of filming the ICE agents, or you filming anything on your phone. You're out in the streets, you're holding up your phone, you're filming. Instead of doing that, it's like a little necklace. There's a pendant you can put on a necklace, and that's the camera attached to your phone.
Yeah.
So you can have your phone feeding it to your live stream or your Google Drive or whatever, but you're hands free and you're walking down the street and you're talking, you're handing out flyers, you're seeing people's faces, you're getting their responses. I think it was like $100. I'm gonna have to invest in one of those.
eBay, for your knowledge, is a publicly traded company. And,
yeah, it was freestanding once upon a time. It still is apparently.
Well, so I mean, this is actually one of the interesting things, and I've been thinking about this. Obviously, there's a lot of allegations going around that the Jews control everything, and they're the boogeyman or something like this.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's the corporations, right? Like if
Yep.
you look at World War I, World War II, and the passing of the Permanent Apportionment Act in 1929, that was all driven by corporations. And the centralization of power has been driven by corporations. And the problem that we find ourselves in is that we don't have representation with the large corporations, right? Or with our elected representatives. And we have bad customer service at both ends, essentially. And part of the reason, right, is because of the capital structure, right, of capital markets. So the top 2 or 3 investors of eBay, the top 3 owners of eBay, are BlackRock, Vanguard, and a third large institutional investor, where everybody has pooled their money in as 401ks, and so there are just millions and millions and millions of shares out, and so it's very hard for somebody to hold 5% of a publicly traded company, or let me put it this way, like have a say, have real representation within these corporations. And so you have this. I think this is like a fundamental part of this disconnect. And I know, Roger, you hate Citizens United, but I think that this gets to it, right? It's the ability for publicly traded corporations who are essentially accountable to nobody except for whoever runs BlackRock and Vanguard, essentially, is and even not then, it's just random boards, right, of people who have pals that went to Ivy Leagues or wherever. It's not a single group of people. It is the interest of capital that does not exist in a governmental structure that provides representation, right? Like I'm a capitalist. I believe in the beautiful presentation of human flourishing that is derived from a recognition of private property. However, if we exist in a governmental system that does not provide us representation, corporations will run us with robots and AI, right? And we are at that precipice right now.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I agree.
And
that's
I'm going to end it there. Yeah.
The suggestion is maybe audio recording instead of video recording might be less awkward and more successful. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. And that's what the journalist did. She wasn't recording me on video. It was audio, and that was more
Right.
comfortable than
The,
being in
the guy who
video.
interviewed me was using his iPhone. That was it.
Yep.
The
Same.
voice recorder.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Sweet.
Well, this has been a great one, Roger. It's so good to see you. I think I'll see you next week, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. And then after that, we're not so sure.
Yeah, Roger gets the trip of a lifetime to Portugal. So everyone,
Oh,
if you
I
have
get-
if you have suggestions on where Roger should go while he's in Portugal, he's taking recommendations.
That actually, you spoke too soon because the first week I'm gone, I'm in California where my daughter and son-in-law are coming in from Portugal so we can all celebrate the wedding where they got married
Okay.
they got married 2 years ago when they were still on Guam because it was convenient to do so for logistical reasons. So
Okay.
this is the celebration. So I get to do that for a week and then I go to Portugal. But we're going over there to visit them and hang out with them and help them move out because his graduate program is coming to an end. He's coming back stateside. So you can send me all the suggestions you want, but you need to understand that there is a spouse and a daughter involved, and whatever suggestions I receive or come up with on my own don't mean shit. Just so you know.
What? Where you're going? I heard there's been a bunch of flooding in Portugal. Is that are the areas you're going to affected by that?
No, I have not heard anything about flooding. I know there's been a lot of flooding in Hawaii. I hadn't heard much about
Okay.
Portugal, but no,
Maybe-
she's in Lisbon. She's in the capital city. So
Okay. Okay. Well, looking forward to next week and to hearing more about your preparations. Elysian, hope you will join us again. And thank you for being here. Feel free to tell your friends. And peace, love, and representation.
ciao.